G'day, eh? Is Canada having an identity crisis? I can't think of any other time in history where Canadians have had to really think hard about what it means to be Canadian. Or does it mean anything at all?
Do it. He's in tune. Hey, good day. Welcome to the Great White North. I'm Bob McKenzie. This is my brother Doug.
You're damn right it means something. And I think people, including myself, have been shaken out of apathy. I've done more soul searching and reminiscing on my own Canadian identity this past month than my entire life. And let me tell you, what a trip down memory lane.
It's burning down and down like water. A long driver's waltz pleases girls completely.
There's a voice. It's Saturday night at Monster Chiller Horror Theatre.
The more I watch those classic clips online, the more the algorithm suggests them to me. And I couldn't be happier. I needed that. Those clips, they instantly bring you back to a more simple time in life. And I got a few more I'm going to share. But how do they fit into Canadian identity? I don't know if I should admit this on camera, but I'm kind of liking all the attention that Canada's getting around the world these days. And we all know why.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
What does it mean to be Canadian? There's people who were born and raised in Canada who don't know how to answer that. They've never really been asked. But now it's almost like people are being forced to look inside and figure out what being Canadian means to them. It's not an easy question. I mean, you can say the things that we have and things that we love, like freedom, of course. But what's a Canadian identity? I've lived all over the country, one coast to another. I own a place in Prince Edward Island on the East Coast, and I spent a lot of time there. And I've lived on the West Coast in British Columbia for almost 10 years. I spent a lot of time on Vancouver Island, where this classic is filmed. So the Beachcombers was filmed in and around Sunshine Coast on Vancouver Island. I have family there, spent some time. And it's really cool to walk around the dock in the little area where it was filmed. His old boat was still there, the diner was set up. I don't know how it is now, but it's very cool. But that's one show that captured part of Canadian identity. It's very different than Corner Gas, of course, which is filmed in the prairies, but also showcases Canadian identity. I've heard people from other countries say that Canada doesn't have a national culture or identity, and maybe you've heard it as well. But to be honest, I kind of took it as a bit of an insult. Unless you've traveled, you don't realize how big Canada is. I've driven across the country from coast to coast numerous times, in the winter and the summer. And what I found odd is when I moved to BC, I was a teenager, people knew that I was somewhere from the East Coast because of the way I talked. There's a difference. Living in Toronto, I can tell when somebody's from the East Coast, a Maritimer. People tell me that I speak like a Maritimer. My background is Acadian. My last name is a very strong Acadian name. Acadians are Canadians, very proud Canadians. Most Canadians don't know what an Acadian is, especially the further west that you go. Acadian culture and heritage, it's very important to Canada. We have a flag, which I posted in the past. Some people think it's France. I spent a lot of time on PEI, on property which has been in my family for generations, at a house built by my great-grandfather, Maxime. And of course, there's First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people right across the entire country. And they're very different depending on where you are. Different languages, customs, different history. So how do you package up everything I just said into one sentence which is supposed to define us as Canadians? I think there's been too much division in this country lately. Some division's normal, of course. Not everybody's going to get along. And some people are just bigoted or ignorant, and they want to stay that way. But I also think that there's been too much division lately. And division's being pushed on people for all kinds of different reasons. Political, financial gain. Based on size alone, you can fit dozens of countries from all over the world into Canada. You can fit dozens of countries into one province. It's fairly easy to define a country which is smaller than some of our cities. So don't lecture us about Canadian culture, and don't be surprised when we don't fit into a mold. It wouldn't even make sense to try. I haven't heard this intro in God knows how long, but when I did, I was instantly brought back. It just sounds Canadian, and I smiled as soon as I heard it. If you're old enough to remember, you'll know what I'm talking about.
There was a time when beaver lodges like this one and the busy beavers that build them had almost disappeared from Canada.
Have you seen the promotional material about Canada that they show in other countries to advertise traveling or moving to Canada? They show snow-covered mountains, green fields. It's beautiful. Lakes and glaciers, Niagara Falls. They always show a moose or a beaver. Canada geese. They show fishing boats in the ocean, tractors in the fields, in the prairies, grain towers. If they show a city at all, it's a very quick shot of Vancouver or Toronto. The videos they show are very similar to the national anthem, which used to play on TV every morning. And I don't know if you remember that either, when TV didn't run all night. I used to be a kid. I would get up early in the mornings on the weekends to watch TV downstairs, watch cartoons, and all you saw was the colors on the screen. And the first thing that would pop up, the first thing that would play was the national anthem. It seemed pretty Canadian to me. So that's how they advertise Canada and other countries. But unless you make an effort to get out and explore, you would never see that. I don't think those ads are misleading at all. That's a Canada that I've experienced my entire life, the Canada I know and love. But if you live in a city or near the city and you never make an effort to explore, then you'll never see that part of Canada. And you won't take that on as part of your Canadian identity. You have to make an effort. There's 3 stereotypes Canadians have that, unless you live under a rock, you would have heard at some point in your life. I'm not going to spend long on this. It's nothing new. Number 1, Canadians are very polite. The more I think about my own experiences, the more I agree with this statement. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually a compliment. Number 2, Canadians love maple syrup and hockey. Well, of course we love maple syrup. You ever had it? It's nature's gift to humanity. You mix it with snow and you can make candy. Maple taffy. And that sugary fructose table syrup stuff you buy in the pancake section at the grocery store, it's not the same. Trust me. Number 3, it's always cold and covered in snow. I'm sure by now people know that isn't true. But to be fair, I've seen Rocky IV so many times that whenever I think of Russia, I associate that with the cold as well. You go with what you see, with what you're exposed to. I put out a video not long ago titled What Americans Really Think of Canadians, and I'm going to link it at the end. In the comments, people made a really good point. They mentioned that they doubt that Americans realize how many of their favorite actors are actually Canadian, and that Canadian actors also have a reputation for being polite. Ryan Gosling, Ryan Reynolds, Dan Aykroyd, Neve Campbell, Michael J. Fox, Mike Myers, Catherine O'Hara, and one of my favorites, Wolverine.
Your country needs you. I'm Canadian.
I'm loving the Canadian pride I'm seeing these days all over the national news and social media. I feel like the country was in a sleep and people have woken up. They've been shaken up. There's a lot of uncertainty out there and it's causing a lot of general anxiety. Some people are happy about what's taken place and they see it as an opportunity. They'd be more than happy to become part of the U.S. And of course, there's others who say that they'll fight to the finish to make sure it doesn't happen. And I believe them. But no matter what side you're on, uncertainty, it can be difficult. And all this is happening when we don't even really have a stable government. Our prime minister, he's basically resigned. So of course there's uncertainty around politics. And I'll tell you something else about Canadians. We're not defined by our leaders or our future leader. We tell them who we are. We don't need them to tell us who we are. There's also all kinds of little quirks that Canadians have which make us unique. And sometimes you don't realize these quirks until you step outside of your comfort zone and you travel abroad. Showing Canadian classic clips from old TV shows, it can really overwhelm somebody with feelings of nostalgia. It did for me. And there's clips that pretty much, they're only known in Canada. You need to get out and experience Canada. The last time I drove across the country, I decided to do it the day before. Drop by a cultural festival which you've never experienced. Again, step outside of your comfort zone. A powwow, Acadian festival, the Stampede. Canadians are fairly friendly, and generally they're very welcoming. I speak from experience. You need to do your best to truly experience Canada. If you don't have an easy answer to the question, what does it mean to be Canadian, or what is a Canadian? Well, that's okay, because you can't sum it up in one sentence or phrase, but you know what it feels like. And that feeling of nostalgia, that pride, to me, it's worth fighting for. Please let me know your thoughts. Be safe out there, look after one another, and perhaps we will see you again.
Okay. Oh, so that's our topic for today, the Great White North. So, good day.
What an education, eh?